Magnus Infernum.
Greetings, this is Magnus Infernum. Goodness gracious, I have been bit by the casual bug, so let's just jump right into today's deck tech, Artificer Empires. This deck is simultaneously an Artificer tribal deck and an Empires combo deck. It is trying to win in two ways. The first is playing mid-range Artificers with equipment to assault the opponent. The second is playing the 3 Empire cards to create a favorable board state for yourself. Let's start with the little guys that get the ball rolling sooner than later. Etherium Sculptor, a 1/2 artifact creature, Vidalcan Artificer for 1 generic and 1 blue mana. Artifact spells you cast cost 1 generic less to cast. This creature does work. It is an early 1/2 blocker that make the equipment and artifact spells cheaper to cast, but it also makes itself cheaper to cast since it is an artifact creature. Not only that, it can be tapped to help cast the mid-range Artificers with Improvise. Etherium Sculptor has a buddy to assist it with the artifact love, Renowned Weaponsmith, an early blocker as a 1/3 for 1 generic and 1 blue. This human artificer creature can be tapped to add 2 generic mana to your mana pool. Spend this mana only to cast artifact spells or activate abilities of artifacts. The second ability is tap a blue mana and tap Renowned Weaponsmith. Search your library for a card named Heartpiercer Bow or Vial of Dragonfire. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. The first ability can get artifact cards out earlier as well as pay for the equip costs and be used to activate the Empire card's abilities. Not only that, the deck is running Heartpiercer Bow. So if the Weaponsmith doesn't have much to do for a turn, then this card can be used to fetch the equipment. Both of these cards have great benefits early to mid-game, so running 4 of each is a great boon for the deck. Since I was talking about equipment, here's one that turns Artificers from chumps into cards that can actually hold their own, Inventor's Goggles. An artifact equipment for 1 generic to cast and 2 generic mana to equip. Equipped creature gets +1/+2. Whenever an Artificer enters the battlefield under your control, you may attach Inventor's Goggles to it. You will want to play 4 of this card. Drop this on turn 1, then on turn 2 play Etherium Sculptor. The goggles equip to the Vidalcan, and you have yourself a 2/4 creature that makes your artifacts cheaper to cast, all on turn 2. The other equipment in the deck, which is a 4 of, is Heartpiercer Bow, an artifact equipment for 2 generic to cast and 1 generic to equip. Whenever equipped creature attacks, Heartpiercer Bow deals 1 damage to target creature defending player controls. One of these isn't very impactful. However, with the Renowned Weaponsmith ability to search for this equipment, it is surprisingly easy to get all 4 out and equipped. And dealing 4 damage divided as you wish among opposed creatures can be quite dangerous. Stepping back to talk about the rest of the creatures in the deck, Bastion Inventor, a 4/4 Vidalcan Artificer with Improvise and Hexproof for 5 generic and 1 blue mana. And Windkin Raiders, a 4/3 Human Artificer with Improvise and Flying. With equipment and other artifacts in the deck, as well as Etherium Sculptor, which is an artifact creature, the deck can easily play an improvised creature on turn 4, and with some luck, it can be as soon as turn 3. When equipped, these modest-sized creatures can become fearsome. They can be an issue for the opponents to deal with, since one of them has Hexproof and the other has Flying. Put 3 of each of these creatures in the deck. Time to give a rundown of the Empire cards. First is Crown of Empires, an artifact for 2 generic. Tap 3 generic mana and tap Crown of Empires. Tap target creature. Gain control of that creature instead if you control an artifact named Scepter of Empires and Throne of Empires. Next is Scepter of Empires. It can be cast for 3 generic mana. You can tap this artifact. Scepter of Empires deals 1 damage to target player. It deals 3 damage to that player instead if you control an artifact named Crown of Empires and Throne of Empires. And finally, Throne of Empires, an artifact for 4 generic mana, that by paying 1 generic mana and tapping the throne, put a 1/1 white soldier creature token onto the battlefield. Put 5 of those tokens on the battlefield instead if you control artifacts named Crown of Empires and Scepter of Empires. So individually, these cards are underwhelming. But together, being able to get 5 1/1 creatures, gaining control of a creature, and dealing 3 damage every turn puts an opponent in a bad position. And of course to note, these are not legendary cards, so you can absolutely have more than one into play. And of course, they can be used to help get the improvised creatures into play. I only run 3 of each of these cards. Because the deck is running 3 Fabricate, a blue sorcery for 2 generic and 1 blue mana. Search your library for an artifact card, reveal it and put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. This card helps assemble the Empire pieces. The only other non-permanent card in the deck is 3 Stoic Rebuttal, an instant for 1 generic and 2 blue mana. Metalcraft. Stoic Rebuttal costs 1 generic mana less to cast if you control 3 or more artifacts. Counter target spell. With a decent amount of artifacts in the deck, this effectively becomes a traditional counterspell. The land base is simple enough, 20 islands and 3 Buried Ruin, for a total of 23 lands. Buried Ruin can tap to produce colorless mana, as well as pay 2 generic mana, tapping Buried Ruin and sacrificing it. Return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So if you're having issues with your artifacts being destroyed, Buried Ruin can get them back. Now for some deck alterations. If you find artifact destruction to be too much of an issue, throwing in 1 or 2 Padim Console of Innovation can give the artifacts hexproof and potentially draw you cards. It is not unusual for the deck to run out of cards in hand, so another card drawing option is Artificer's Epiphany. Not only does its name stay in theme with the deck, but it can also put more cards into your hand. What can also be a nice card to throw in is Thopter's Spy Network. It can put a 1/1 flying artifact on the battlefield every turn, while also being capable of drawing a card after combat. It also wouldn't be a bad idea to throw in your favorite equipment. Overall, this deck is a 2-trick Thopter, either trying to attack the opponent with 1 or 2 equipped mid-range creatures, or by going off with the 3 Empire cards. While the deck does burn its candle at both ends, it can actually work fairly well without the ideal cards. A Renowned Weaponsmith with Inventor's Goggles attached to it becomes a 2/5 creature that is great for blocking. And of course the Empire cards can work individually, so if you end up with 2 Scepter of the Empires out in play, without either of the other Empire cards out, then you can start putting your opponent on a timer to apply pressure on them. So at the very least, the deck is normally doing something. And as far as the deck's price, it'll cost you around $20 to $25. The most expensive card in the deck is Fabricate at $3 each. And if that ends up being a little too expensive, you can actually remove the 3 Fabricates and just add a full play set of the Empire cards. The only other cards with a costly note is Buried Ruin at $1 each. Thank you very much for watching. What do you think about the deck? Is it the way that you would play it? And do you have any experience with the Empire cards? Let me know in the comments. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed the content, then press the like button. If you found the video displeasing, then press the dislike button. Bolt that subscribe button to stay up to date with future videos. This is Magnus Infernum. Till we meet again.